allow me to engage now my panelists. And in case you joined us, this is Kenya Decide. And remember, we are putting things into perspective matters election. And before we crossed over to Upper Hill, we were talking about how 8 million Kenyans did not vote. Kindly carry on.
Yeah. So, I mean, as I was saying, that there is a lot of cynicism amongst especially young people on whether election matter, or rather on whether voting does matter. And so what do they decide to do? They stay away. So it is easy to dismiss the 8 million who didn't show up and say, look, it is upon them. If they want, they can vote. If they don't want, it's okay. But here lies a problem. If people cannot see electoral process and election as an avenue for peaceful and democratic rotation of leadership, people are going to resort to other avenues. And what are the other avenues? They'll start rebelling, resisting, and coming up with alternatives for providing or getting the leadership that they want. That's why it is very, very important for us to interrogate and ask ourselves, why is it that the 8 million didn't show up to vote? Mm-hmm. Because that is a significantly large number of people to just ignore. Like you did say, mm-hmm. if someone would have just mobilized those 8 million, that would have been an outright winner. Mm-hmm. So people who were voted by less figures compared to people who stayed away. So that is something that we need to interrogate, because if it goes on like that, and we've seen in countries that has happened, we saw it in places like Tunisia, Egypt, we've seen it in places like Mali, where young people feel that they're fed up with the conventional process, electoral process, and they're saying, look, as we're going on the street, as we're going to create our alternative way of installing leaders. So more than people who are declared winners and losers, we need to look at this voting bloc that didn't show up. And not just the people who didn't show up. We remember we still had an issue with the mass voter registration. Mm-hmm. The target was 9 million. Mm-hmm. It was by IBC was targeting to register 9 million. They brought it down to 6 million. They brought it down to 4 million. Mm-hmm. By end of day, they only managed to register a paltry 2-point-something million. Mm-hmm. And most of them were actually not even new voters. They were just people who were changing their polling stations. So I think we need to pay critical attention mm-hmm. to that voting bloc. Low voter turnout mm-hmm. is an issue that has come out, and it's a significantly important issue mm-hmm. that we need to address.
It's a good thing, Ali, that Raphael has brought about a myriad of challenges that make people not go to the vote. As a young person, you have seen that Kenyans would rather go on Twitter and, of course, on TikTok and other social media platforms, but the young people would rather be there than actually know more about their civic duty, know about why they should vote, and actually vote. Does it disturb you as a young person who is on the online digital platforms?
Yes, it really disturbs me on how we are being handled as youths. Again on the issue of being literacy level in the youth is high in Kenya. Mm-hmm. So once there is an election and there is campaigns, mm-hmm. compared to how on the voting uptake, voters registration in the last polls, compared to the 2017 polls, the 2017 polls was higher when youth have turned up for a large number of voting in the voting registration. Because by then we could have seen the presidential, those people who are the election bromance in Ruto and Uhuru, mm-hmm. they were seen as youths. They're relatively younger than the other people we have seen in the political scene. So in that year, it encouraged. But once they split their electoral paths, mm-hmm. and their parties, then Kenyans have seen there are other people coming to the ground to agitate for the youths, and everybody was making a discussion on rallies that youths there will be a lot of plans for youth in their subsequent governments. They were promising to form, but again, youths were not enough to be convinced by only those political rallies and shenanigans. They need to have somebody who will sit with them and engage with them through a public baraza or a participation on their civic education, on how they're important and what plans will they get in this government that will be formed.
I think social media will do far much better than public barazas, because looking at even the county assemblies, when you call out for public participation, you find that the majority of people are men and women, but not the youth. Perhaps they can be endeared because they are on social media. This would be a good platform to call them out.
The social media is a virtual site. We need to have an engagement where we can ask questions and address them as they are, because in social media there are a lot of technicalities, there are a lot of problems. Others may not even have access to phones. So there's a lot of challenge on the virtual site.
Okay, and just in case you joined us, that Kenya Decider special edition on News Check, that we are looking at matters polls. And now we want to fortify my panel here and allow me to introduce the first MP-elect I'm interviewing on this show. He is not a new face. He is a former Deputy Speaker of Parliament, and he is the Dadaab MP-elect, Maalim Farah. Karibu sana mheshimiwa.
Asante sana, thank you.
And we want to throw you in the deep end. We're talking about how this election was. The 8 million people did not vote. Out of we had 22.1, 14 million according to IBC are the ones, but a large number did not vote, and unfortunately it is the youth. But before we go to that, Azimio and other petitioners have already filed a petition at the Apex Court. I would want to pick your mind on the same.
Yeah, I mean, we have, I am from Azimio, by the way, so we already filed the case. It will go through the process, the judicial process, and will be heard. So we filed, we will serve progressively and go through every step. And finally, the Supreme Court is going to hear it.
It is the third.
This will all end in about 3 weeks from now, in my opinion.
And it is the third time that, the third electoral cycle in a row that we are having petitions challenging the presidential election. What does this say about our democracy?
Well, about our democracy is still not perfect. At least in this particular case right now, in the presidential elections, there were serious issues. And what's a better place to address those serious issues than to take them to court, the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is there expressly for only that purpose. The other bits and pieces it does, which is judicial advice and the rest of it, is peripheral. But the main function of the Supreme Court is to hear election petitions every 5 years if there is a petition. We've had election malpractices in this country for the longest. But the most pronounced was, or one of the series of pronouncements was both the one of 2013 and the one of 2017. This one is equally one in which, for lack of a better expression, is in which the winners are the losers and the losers are the winners.
But we should actually let.
But that's going to be determined by the court. That's what I'm saying. Well, that's going to be, and those are the grounds on which we're making this petition. But the court is going to decide. It's going to come to those pronouncements itself. But the facts point to clearly an open and shut case in this case. But we've had a similar thing also in 2017. I personally believe that at the presidential level we have had election malpractices, and the winner has never been pronounced as the winner for the last. This is the fourth election from 2007. I believe that 2007 Kibaki did not win. It was won by, in my opinion, that's the point.
Yes,
look,
yes,
you are a state agency here.
Not even that.
Just a moment, let me just finish.
Yes.
But when you invite a politician of the tradition and the history of Farah Maalim, sometimes you have to listen when he says some very, very hard things, and just wait, and maybe you can respond later.
Without due respect, Mheshimiwa, we cannot, you know very well that it's against the law to discuss the merits of a case.
I'm not discussing the merits and the demerits of these things. I'm only discussing the merits and the merits of the decision to take this into court.
Okay.
That you can discuss.
All right.
That you can discuss.
Yes.
I'm a legal mind also,
yes.
so don't worry about that. I care about myself having a suit than even yourselves. But because you're a government corporation for the longest,
we try to be as objective as we can, because at the end of the day, we don't serve the government, we serve Kenyans.
If you want to compete, in this very, very, what you call, crowded media field, you clearly have got to show a very high level of independence, and that of course is for you to decide.
Okay,
but
okay. Away from that, because at the end of the day, I do believe that we serve Kenyans as opposed to serving the government. But your opinion you do respect your.
But do you know who's going to be the government? You don't even know who's going to be the government.
Yes, I don't know. That is why I say I do not work for the government. I work for Kenyans. That is what the broadcasting as Kenya. But away from that, perhaps we can diffuse that by.
You asked a question whether our democracy is that perfect, because this is the third time we're having this suit. You see what I mean? We didn't have a constitutional provision to address these things in 2007. That's why the country almost collapsed. People took extrajudicial avenues. You know what I mean? Extra constitutional and judicial. People went into the streets, and there was a civil war in the country. And that's why we ended up almost becoming a failed state and getting people to come and solve our problems as a way of trying to cure the possibility of us having a similar thing to that. That's how the Supreme Court the idea was meted and included in our constitution of 2010, this new dispensation that you don't have to fight in the streets of Nairobi and Eldoret and Kitale and Kisumu. You can go to court and have your matters determined. In the last one, the election results were overturned. You get my point? And the one before that, it was a split decision. And the one of 2007, we all know what happened. So with all the efforts we've been making, we have made some few gains, but we are not pretty much out of the woods. With the mere fact that the one of 2017 was nullified in itself is a very serious development in our democracy itself and in our judicial system. And we're hoping also something similar happens this time, one way or the other, and we will have an election that's not going to be contested. The main what do you call areas of or grounds for this current petition are only two things, in my opinion. One is figures that are reflected in the presidential elections, 1 million plus votes, and not reflected in any of those other elections, not in the governors, not in the MCA, not in the senators, not in the MPs and the rest. So the question is, and those are the grounds, those are some of the very strong grounds in which the one of 2017 was nullified. So the possibility of this also being nullified following that precedent, or the Supreme Court is not even obligated to follow its own precedent, is very high. So to the extent we are still not out of the woods, yes, we're still not out of the woods. Our electoral system is not as perfect, but be that as may, we still performed very well in all other electoral offices in the country.
And I'm going to ask you another question, but this one is quite legal, because it's something that Kenyans have asked a lot in regards to the powers of IEBC chair in declaring the result. But before then, talking of IEBC, Raphael, Wafula Chebukati has moderated the second election, but unfortunately he has not had the best of days in the office, and it has been challenged. And I think something that even Kenyans didn't really anticipate was a divided commission. And remember, we still have 2 gubernatorial, 4 parliamentary, and 2 civic elections that is supposed to be done by a divided IEBC in a couple of days?
Thanks. I mean, just before I respond to that, I just want to build on what Mheshimiwa Farah has said. I think our democracy is work in progress, and democracy is work in progress all over the world, but ours is work in progress, just about 50 years old or something. And so every electoral process needs to get us closer to perfecting that democracy. We are not there yet. But if you look at the processes we've undergone, for example, the Supreme Court ruling of 2017, it helps us to strengthen our electoral process, just like I did say. So every election helps us to strengthen our democracy, but also strengthen our electoral process. That is very, very important. And that's why my argument has been some of the things we've seen the electoral management body doing. For example, issues of election transmission of the Forms 34As, verification process by involving all stakeholders. Truly, it's not from the abundance of their heart. It's not really because they would want to do them, but it is because of the subsequent processes, like the court processes that we followed. It helps us to identify which are the areas that are causing electoral malpractices, and how can we strengthen them? Actually, how can we cure them? And that is very, very important. That's why, for me, I know people have been big on people conceding, that it is great people conceding. Well, that is good. If we do not identify the loopholes and strengthen them, future elections might be worse. But now to the electoral body. The electoral body is a constitutional body. It's an independent commission that is supposed to, has the mandate, to facilitate, monitor, observe, and oversee our election. That is a body that is so significant because, like I said, election is not just any other event. It is an important process that helps us to, with a mechanism for peaceful. Remember, peaceful. Without that mechanism, election mechanism, we'll never have peaceful and democratic rotation of leadership. That body needs to be seen to be impartial, needs to be competent, needs to be independent, but also needs to help us to have a free, fair, and credible election. Remember, part of the reason why many people stay away from engaging in voting and electoral process is because they feel that electoral body is not competent, it is not impartial, it is not going to conduct a free and fair election. And that's why all of us, more than anything else, we are looking forward to a robust electoral body, an electoral body that is going to deliver more than anything else to Kenyans. Unfortunately, there were issues that were already raised about IBC in terms of the way it was constituted, the way other commissioners joined, the way it had conducted previous elections. There were already issues that were being raised. Unfortunately, they were never addressed conclusively, whether in terms of personalities or in terms of issues or in terms of changing legislation. That was never addressed, and that's why we've gotten ourselves up to this point. Was that we have a divided commission. It basically means that this body was not cohesive. There were issues that were happening. While all of us from outside, we would say, because of maybe adoption of technology, it's possible that things are going well this time. But just the fact that the commission is divided on the declaration of the winner, it means that, and of course, without discussing the merits, the details of the case, the Supreme Court battle is going to help us unearth what were these issues that some of us didn't see, the issues that were said to be opaque, what are these issues? And I think we are going to see that. But then it also brings us back to the point of how do we ensure that we strengthen this body that has a constitutional mandate to facilitate, oversee, observe, and deliver free, fair, and credible election. It means that there's a big problem there. And the fact that the chair, I am not a lawyer myself, but declaration of the winner from where I sit is not an event. It's not what you do. It is the process that builds up to that. And so the process must be seen to be free, to be fair, to be transparent, and to be accountable, so that it is not just about declaring the winner, it's what's the process that led us to that. And I think that is what perhaps part of the petitions are raising and questioning.
Allow me to go back to our discussion where I'm having three panelists here talking about the election and the aftermath, for lack of a better word. And you are talking about the youth and creating opportunities. Perhaps that is why we are seeing a lot of apathy when it comes to vote apathy when it comes to the youth. They have so many promises. They have been told how the lives are going to change in manifestos, but we haven't seen that really come out.
That maybe has been largely caused by the high soaring rate of unemployment in the country, and largely the youth being the most, they constitute 75% of the population, and they have been left out by the labor force. So what I say, for creation of jobs, it must have to come from the government. There are various bodies that are instituted for and controlling funds that were meant to empower youths. But just the case of a scenario in the case of Kazi Mtani, that was a fund that was given for, like, it ran for almost a year and a half. It collapsed again, it restarted, ran for a few weeks and months. But what we mean is we need to have proper plans, to have funds that will empower these youths, if not even empowerment, that will even make them earn a living by, let's say, access to credit facilities. If they can get, they can get a place where they can borrow money, and maybe they can venture into business. Even let's even say live off even empowering them in terms of business and livelihood. Even on education wise, the help loan has been a crisis. For them to access the help loan meant for education, to stipend their education, was a problem. So what I mean is, like, the government and the bodies instituted to really cater for the youths have really messed this, and of course majorly contributed to the problem in the youths.
Yeah. Honorable Farah, I'm quite sure this is something that is going to come up during the petitions, but the Constitution mandates the IEBC chairman to declare the presidential results, and we saw a divided IEBC. Now, exactly, it takes us to
it's the commission.
The IEBC commission. The chairman is the one who is mandated, right? He's the one who can declare the results. Other commissioners cannot declare, right?
That's what I want to tell you. The commission is supposed to tally.
I was actually getting to that.
Just a moment, yeah. The commission is supposed to tally the votes, verify, make sure these are the numbers, and then the pronouncement will be made by the returning officer, who is the chair of the commission, as a spokesperson of the commission. Not as an individual with extra powers who is on his own and as if the rest of them are just flower girls. Presumption is that the decisions will always be reached by. You see, the president of the Supreme Court is the Chief Justice. But the Chief Justice is merely a spokesperson and the head of that institution. The institution is there to make these decisions themselves. To the extent to which he goes out there as a spokesman and takes over unilaterally all the authorities and the powers, is wrong. And that is going to be pronounced by the Supreme Court. And the provision is still there.
And actually, my question was,
what's the question?
Now, where does it take us? Where does it take us now? Because the Constitution and the formulators of the Kenyan laws did not envisage a place where we could be having a divided commission just a few hours or minutes before the declaration of the presidential result.
Yes. You see, Article 81 of the Constitution says, the electoral system shall comply with the following. It's many of them, but let me just go to the ones that are of interest now. Free and fair elections, which are by secret ballot, free from violence, intimidation, improper influence of corruption, conducted by an independent body. And that is the IEBC. Transparent, administered in an impartial, neutral, efficient, accurate, and accountable manner. Look at the number of adjectives that have been used. First is an institution that conducts its elections. Second is the transparency of that thing, open. And then finally, it has to be administered in an impartial, neutral, efficient, accurate, accountable, in the sense that you are allowed as a commission to verify. For example, the problem in this case here was about 1 million votes that were cast in favor of the president that were not reflected in all the other contestations. And under such circumstances, the commissioners who have revolted wanted to call the presiding officers and call the returning officers and ask them, why is it that there are 60 votes or 70 votes or 100 votes more in the presidential election than is reflected in the KIMS. To verify. And maybe seek a court order to allow them to open some of these things. And because I have a strong feeling that they did not even stuff the boxes. They merely played around. Let me just finish.
I really wouldn't want us to go to that, but
why? Why wouldn't you want to go on to that?
Because it's already in court.
No, but
the matter has already been filed.
We are not.
We cannot say. You know, when you say that
you're talking to somebody who is a legal mind. Let me tell you. When you want to talk about what's called sub judice,
yes,
is we're not discussing.
But no, talking about stuffing boxes and the honourable. But I will still pick your mind on what does that leave us when it comes to the two gubernatorial and the other civic seats.
Look,
and welcome back to KBC Kenya Decide, and we have been looking at the election aftermath, and on set I am joined by Honorable Maalim Farah, who is the MP-elect for Dadaab and former Deputy Speaker. We also have Raphael Obonyo, who is a policy analyst, and also we are joined by Abdirahman Ali, who is an online content moderator and also a policy analyst. And before we took that break and have had a feel of the Supreme Court, Moya, we were talking about what it means with a divided commission, and we still do have elections to go. Where does that leave us, and especially when it comes to the law? Because maybe somebody could challenge that after the elections are done and dusted.
After what is that? That can be challenged. Come again.
I'm saying we have a divided commission.
Yes.
It's not a secret anymore.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we still have seats that will be contested on Monday. That is the governor.
Yes.
We have the 4 parliamentary and 2 civic seats. Where does that leave us?
All elections are supposed to be conducted by a competent institution, and the institution is the corporate body called the IEBC, Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. It has to be a commission. So we already have a problem. We also have a lacuna in law, and we never envisaged a possibility in which there's going to be this powerful split to say that, this is how it's going to be carried out if a split arises within the commission. And there's no consensus. In the Supreme Court, we have no problem with that. It's just the majority. But you can also give your own dissenting ruling judgment. In this case, we have a problem, and we have a constitutional crisis in as far as moving forward from here, how elections are going to be conducted under this circumstance, under this unemphasized split within the commission.
And unfortunately,
but it says the Constitution is very clear. It says it's a commission as an institution, and it says that the commission is going to tally all that. It doesn't say that the chairman of the commission or the returning officer of the presidential elections is going to tally. It says the commission is going to tally. So and it also says that this is supposed to be conducted in an accurate, transparent, you get my point, and all impartial and verifiable. That's the point, yes, and very, very, very transparent, accountable. That's the word I'm actually looking for, an accountable way in which you can account for. This has not been done right now. It's not been done right now.
And in 2017, NASA wanted the referee, that is Wafula Chebukati, to go, and that was one of their demands if they had to go back to rerun. What happens this time round, if at all the Apex Court tells Kenyans that we have to go to the ballot, and we have a divided commission, and partly some of the petitions are actually castigating the referee, that is Wafula Chebukati.
Yeah. I mean, he has but look, if you ask me what I would have done under normal circumstances, let me tell you one thing. In any democracy, nobody is above the law. If you get information right now that our president, our sitting president, is selling state secrets to another country, would you say that he is the president and is above the law and he cannot be questioned on that and he cannot be investigated? No. You investigate. Once you investigated, if you find him culpable, then of course you start the proceedings. First of all, he has to be taken into some kind of a custody and he has to be interrogated. So the moment the criminal intent itself was expressed by a section of the commission that Chebukati is basically not running this thing in accordance with the law. The ordinary thing, the normal thing was that for the DCI to move in, take all the 7 of them somewhere and get them to record statements and then secure the assets. You see what I mean? Do you know right now in what do you call this place? No. The former president of the US, Donald Trump, had carried some classified information, and the information got to the FBI. The FBI got a court order without his knowledge to go and search his place. And they searched his place. They just came in and said, we have a court order. Doesn't matter whether you're the president or you're the former president. And they got some classified information. And the Justice Department right now is considering the possibility of taking him to court. Nobody's above the law. So whenever you have that, then the DCI should have moved in and then secure the assets so that they're not tampered with. And at the same time, based on their own what they call statements, conduct an investigation. When you conduct an investigation, that's why it's always good to have a civil service that is independent from the political leadership. You understand my point?
Yes.
Clearly independent from the political leadership. Okay. That's why we got the office of the director of the public prosecution. He's got a tenure, a security of tenure, and he's independent from anything. Once you appoint him, you cannot sack him for the next 6 years or 7 years. It's 6 years. It's 6 years, I think, yes. Yeah. And all these officers are supposed to have, because then they can act in the interest of the country. But by now, we would have gone far enough.
Okay.
And by now, we would have had some presiding officers who are in court being told, why is this variance? Why do you have less numbers here for this other and you have more numbers here? And being told to explain. That way, the country would have literally made us leaps and bounds in becoming a nation of laws, not a nation of men and women. You know what I mean?
All right.
Not a nation in which you take the leadership regardless of which method you use, and then you use the leadership then to emasculate every other sane idea within the country itself. You become a dictator unto yourself.
All right.
So those are the kind of areas that throughout our struggle for multipartyism in this country, or throughout our struggle for reformation, for change, was to have independent institutions that carry out their functions devoid from the political machinations of the day. Okay.
Yes, and
can I be excused because I've got
we kindly want to excuse you.
Yes.
Your final sentiments.
My final sentiment is that the beauty of this country, is that so far we are pretty much increasingly getting better every year. You understand my point? Okay. For now, I must commend all these different institutions. Our courts are working. Supreme Court is working. Commissioners are coming out into the open and saying, sorry, we do not want to be politically right. We have reasons to say this is not going right for the country. And so the courts, in my opinion, will determine this thing. Whichever way they determine. I know which way they're going to determine myself, because I do have an idea. An idea not based on inside information, but an idea because of the law that I've studied. The areas is basically the ones I told you, and then materiality is another area. Whatever it is, this country is still going to be a better country than it was yesterday.
Thank you.
So I want to be happy.
Thank you.
That the future, and right now, by the way, we're not going out into the streets and burning tires. I mean, we don't have a problem in the country. And I want anything.
You're waiting actually for the apex.
Any decision that is going to come out of that apex court is going to be received by Kenyans in the same way they received the one which has already happened.
Thank you.
And I'm
so
confident.
much.
Thank you very much.
Shukran. And let me go back to you, and we need to pick up the pace. Looking at our election cycle, the economy is always polarized by the election, and now we have an extended one because we have to first of all hear what the Supreme Court has to decide, and if at all it has to extend and say that we have to go back to the ballot, that will be an extended, and we have the sugar, the unga subsidy and the fuel also coming to an end. Where does that leave Kenya economy?
I think one is that we need to always bring our election to a tidy closure. Unfortunately, Kenya has been in an electioneering mood for so long that after every election we start campaigning for the next election, and that has serious impact on our economy. I think as a country we need to have a decent conversations with ourselves and say, look, after the Supreme Court ruling and whatever decisions are made, then we should allow ourselves now to go into governing the country. And governing the country means delivering on the pledges and the promises that we did make. And like my colleague did say, for example, youth are looking forward to jobs. Youth are looking forward to better education. I mean, citizens are looking forward to better and quality healthcare, decent and affordable housing. We need to deliver on that. But if we are constantly on electioneering mood or election campaigns, we might never be able to deliver on that. And there are good examples across the world where people don't start campaigning until maybe a few months or a few years to elections.
And even IBC has to announce when the campaigns are.
Exactly. But in this country, I think we find ourselves campaigning throughout. After one election, we start campaigning for the next elections, and that has major implications. So on the economy, and so we really need to check on that, either by putting in place laws or just by being decent human beings, knowing that you can't be running all the time. You need to now stop and do something else.
All right, Ali, I would like to pick your sentiments on the youth and the future as we wait.
As youth, the future doesn't look so promising, depending on the current economy and the trend in which our government really addresses on matters of youth and our democracy.
As youth, we need to be optimistic about how the future is, as opposed to being negative about it.
Yes, but that is right. But how are you going to be optimistic when you don't have the right person at your back? Like the government should be
more
at
or
your
less
back.
Like inclusion.
Yes,
more
inclusivity. Yes, what I mean is
leadership.
Yes, we need to be included in leadership in terms of, like in the case of campaigns. The campaigns are hefty, expensive matter because youth cannot take part in elections because of being an expensive affair.
Yeah.
So what I mean is, like, if you go to try and get even a political nominations, the first thing they need to know how healthy are you, a millionaire. That's what they want to know. No. If you are not, they won't give you a chance. Second thing, if you run on an independent ticket, again, you need to dish out money because that's what other political bigwigs in the field have been doing. So as Kenyans, I'll say youths, we are for now as it stands, we don't look, the future doesn't look bright for us.
And since it is actually, at the end of the day, remember, we are national TV, there are so many youths who are watching, and if we tell them the future is not bright, actually we might be
I'm sorry to say that.
No, but the future is in our hands. I think we can take charge. Yes, no, I just wanted to say that for young people, they must realize that the future is in their hands. They cannot be bystanders, they cannot be silent recipients, they cannot just be complaining. Don't sit and watch. Build that future that you want, and so we must constantly build that future that we want, either through installing the right leadership, through engaging as voters, and through making our contributions to make this country better. So I think for me, if we take that the future is in our hands, then there is great hope and the future is bright.
Thank you so much, Raphael Obonyo, who is a public policy analyst. Thank you so much for your insight and for your time. And also, Ali, thank you so much for your time and your insight. And don't go away, because in the next 2 minutes, I'm also joined by the legal minds and governance experts to put into perspective some of the things that we are likely to hear and talk about when it comes to the petitions that are in court. Don't go away. This is KBC. Welcome back. Just in case you has joined us, this is KBC News Check. We are still looking at matters polls, and yesterday 9 petitions were filed, 8 challenging the results of the presidential election and 1 seeking to affirm that what IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati announced after the general polls. Now, very quickly, I'm joined by a governance and leadership expert, Diego Ngogi Wilson. He has also served in the county governments. We do remember that we now heading to transitional governments when we come to the day after tomorrow, yes? They will be, actually they're being sworn in tomorrow, the governors, and then the MPs will have to wait a little bit longer. But other than that, we have leadership in counties as well that we'll be looking at. And I'm also joined by 2 advocates of the High Court, beginning with Alex Mola, who is a constitutional lawyer, and it's always a good to see you, Gibson.
Thank you.
Gisore, who is also a constitutional lawyer. And perhaps we'll start with you, Gibson, very quickly. IEBC, looking at just a glance at the petitions, the question of numbers really come out. And without even delving further into the numbers, IEBC has been mandated by law to carry out, verify, tally, everything, do everything. 2017, we were in the same quagmire. Yeah. In 2022, we still have the same numbers cropping up. They have the capacity, the capability, the funding. But the issue of tallying has always, and actually we don't use board mass, we don't use those logarithms, we just have to add a simple calculator. But the issue is still being challenged at the apex court again.
Yes. I think, Ben, as you've correctly said it, I think Kenyans are a very interesting lot. And given that IBC had a very simple task to just conduct the election, tally, verify, and declare the winner. But now we have issues. We have serious issues in a situation whereby you find that now there are allegations being thrown left, right, and center. That at the end of the day, we are not sure whether the numbers we got were actually the true numbers. You know, there are such allegations that the numbers which were the polling station, which Chebukati himself told us, the polling station results are final. We trusted him. He told us, go to the portal, get a simple calculator, and do the math. To some extent, the math became challenging. Kenyans said, now, anyway, we have paid you. Why don't you do the work and just tell us who is it, according to you, has won? Yeah. Now, as we wait for Chebukati to declare who is it he has come up as the winner, a section of his commissioners ran off and say the process was very dark, opaque, and not transparent. So we distance ourselves from that result, causing another confusion. So, they say, there's a saying which says that if the alligator comes from down under the waters and tells you that the crocodile is sick, you can't verify. You will just have to go by that story, because you can't go down to check how sick the crocodile is. So it means if the commissioners came out and told us this thing is very opaque, then there is something we need to debate about. And I'm happy, for me, I'm happy that we are at the Supreme Court, so that we actually cross-examine these issues to the core, because they go to our core nationhood. Because election is everything in this country. Everything is at that stance. There are people now, up to now, who have not gone to work. A friend of mine was saying, I'm not going to work. He's still sick. He's working well, but he's saying, I'm sick. I'm not
and
comfortable.
Even the economy can testify that.
And actually, the economy is also suffering. So that goes to the core of who Kenyans are. So it's very important that Chebukati should have carried this exercise with the same spirit. To some extent, I feel he dropped the ball at some point to a level that we thought he was being transparent and very clear till we were told that he was very opaque. Now, this opaque nature is what we want the court to actually tell us. How opaque was this process? And how better can we do it next time so that we put and lay down procedures and processes which should ensure that at the end of the day, we don't end up being in a crisis like as we are in right now.
Alex, going to you, looking at the mountains of documents that we saw yesterday, and there are 9 petitions. We have not even, basically we have not unraveled anything yet. We are yet to see the lawyers, we are yet to see the amicus, 9 petitions. Everything has to be done within 2 weeks. Is it sufficient time for the Apex Court to make a determination on the same? Of course, they did say that the weekends and they have no time, there's not a 9 to 5. Are we likely to see a lot of consolidation of the cases and the amicuses as well as throwing some of the petitions?
Yeah, I think when you look at the issues that have been raised by various petitions, some of them are cut across. Okay, so we expect when the courts are determining, they're going to come up with a list of issues they have to determine, and some of those issues are going to be consolidated. Okay, and 2, you are saying you've seen a bulk of documents, and I think the other side hasn't actually responded. So you are likely to see even more. We haven't seen anything on whether 14 days are sufficient. Well, I don't want to doubt the wisdom of the crafters of our constitution. They may not be adequate, but I think they're sufficient because this country has been on an electioneering mode for years, let me say. The campaign is officially open in May, but clearly we have been on a campaign mode
since after the
yeah. So we need a break. And that break can only be brought by the Supreme Court. And remember that the only original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court is on the presidential election. So if this is the only original jurisdiction it has, then every facility and every resource has to be availed for them to deliver a verdict within the shortest time possible, because we cannot wait for another month to know the fate of this country. Remember that the current administration is just a caretaker right now. There are many things it can do, and this country has to move forward. So I think the crafters of our constitution were, to me, I don't want to doubt their wisdom. I think yes, there is a lot of work, but clearly that's the work. Whoever went to the Supreme Court or was appointed to be the judge of the Supreme Court, they actually knew that this was awaiting them, because they knew that the only original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court is to handle the presidential election. And if they want more researchers for this particular purpose, they're supposed to be availed. So every resource required has to be availed. It might look like there is a lot of work, but I think the justices of that court were prepared.
Yeah, and somebody might even argue that the cases could be consolidated.
That's right.
Some could be thrown out. And even, we can say in 2017 we did it.
That's right. Even 2013 we did it.
Yes, even 2013 we did it.
So there is no doubt that they can do it right now. Yeah.
Diego, you have held a top seat in the county governments, and you have also vied for an elective seat.
Yeah. Actually,
in the last election. And we will be having a big transition, because looking at 2013, it was more or less like a transition government that we were putting in, because the first time we were using the 2010 constitution, it was also the first time that we were having a new president under the new constitutional dispensation. What is going to play out, and especially now that we have to change, a lot of governments have to change, others have two-term governance already done?
Thank you, Ben.
Even also, you can tell us how the elections were on the ground. Because
I was on the ground. And again, thank you. I want to say, in the world, there is no perfect election. So if we major on the minor things in the elections, then we will never have an election without a petition, especially at the presidential level. And this is where we need maturity, political maturity. That in politics you can win and you can lose. I was vying for a parliamentary seat and I lost, and I congratulated the winner. So unless we have this level of maturity that anyone can win, and we can only have one winner at a time. There is no way we can have two presidents. There is no way we can keep on having handshakes and power sharing. We need to mature up and agree that Kenyans can speak. The margins can be small. Like in America, we saw the margins were very small between Biden and Trump. But still, the government and to give power to the incoming president. So the ground, the way things were happening in the ground, I've learned a few lessons then. And one of the things is that Kenyans may not necessarily be needing or requiring a good leader. There is a lot of there is a lot of
party politics,
voter buying and all those kind of things. So all of us would argue that we need a good leader, but I don't think that is the spirit in the ground. The second thing that I have learned, there is no permanent friend or a permanent enemy, and there is no relative in politics. So these are all these things. They play a lot to do with politics, and I believe. From where I sit, still I have not had any discrepancy in regards to the polling station results. Somebody saying this is not what there was at the polling station level. And we are still waiting to hear what the court has to say on the same.
Gibson, this question I had posed to Honorable Maalim, who is also happens to also be a lawyer. Where does this leave us, and especially now that we have around 8 seats and we have a divided commission that has made it quite challenging, because 4 already dissenting towards some of the things that the chairman has talked about, while 3 who happen to be the commissioners who are there initially have said that the election was free, fair, credible, and verifiable, just as demanded by the Supreme Court in 2017. And we still have polls in 8 parts of the country.
Sure. Now, where we are left at Ben is the aspect that now we will have to believe that for the remaining elections, I think they will conduct. There is no problem. I think yesterday I saw them meet and they had a very collegial meeting, and they have even fixed a date for the elections on the 29th of this August. So that means with the Commission West we are safe. Where we are not safe is the aspect of the presidential, with this dark and opaque nature.
So it doesn't trickle down to decisions that they make as a commission in regards to other positions? No,
it doesn't, because their working, I think, is very clear. I think given the meeting yesterday, I think they had a very good meeting which gave rise to a decision, which decision I think they are going to implement. And I'm hopeful that they are actually hell-bent on delivering that election free and fair, given what has gone on in this earlier one. On the presidential one is where I will want to put more emphasis in the aspect that now, that is where we have a quagmire in that these other commissioners seem to be disagreeing with the decision of what the presidential returning officer, who is the chairman also of the commission, to the results he declared, and the person he declared as the president-elect. For them, in their own opinion, in his own words, actually, he has intimated to the Kenyans that they were trying to twist me to force this to be a runoff. But according to him, he feels whatever figures he has, which we are yet to see, or which he used to declare, and I hope the court will subject him to actually be able to produce whatever figures, how he arrived at those figures. He should be able to produce them, because there is a question of whether the 50% plus 1 was actually attained. So that's going to be one of the most interesting aspects, which is going to be litigated fiercely by both sides. And people will come up with all the English, people will come up with all the evidence.
This time around, we need mathematicians and statisticians.
We will need mathematicians to actually do the math, and whoever who alleges must prove. So if Azimio claims that the 50% plus 1 was actually not attained, it's for them to actually bring their figures. The issue is the other side will also come up with their figures. That is why it's very important for each side to have a tallying center. so that you can also be able to approximate your own mathematics. So that, and the Chebukati was very clear. You have your own, you will compare. Now, if you don't have your own, you want to allege that the 50% plus 1 mark was never attained, then you have a huge task to prove that. But that we're leaving to the parties who have actually brought that particular agenda to actually see it through or not. So that is where we are in that particular issue. And then what I'm also trying to look at this case to determine for us is in case we have a situation where, of course, Chebukati feels he was within his mandate to declare the election the way he declared, but the commissioners feel that they should have shown us the process to the very end, which I think they have said they were never showed. And then they are claiming that the other era which they are saying, which of course has already been dispensed with in the public gallery. But then when such issues do come by, then it's important for us to have a clear roadmap so that next time we don't find ourselves in this. We want to highlight the Maina Kiai case of the 2017, which actually brought all the transparency we have seen in this particular election. But there seems to be remaining some tidbits on some issues of management and administration within the IBC, which also need to be brought clearly. There is a suggestion that, for example, one of the prayers Azimio is actually putting across is that the chairman is guilty or culpable of some serious crimes, which are actually bordering criminal or actually criminal in nature. So in the event that the court actually does find in their favor, then we will be in a quandary and actually goes ahead and says the election was not free and fair. We will need to go into another election. Of course, we can't go with a chairman who has been very found to be culpable. So we will need to have another discussion around that, because the chairmanship is a different kind of seat as opposed to the commission. So do we gazette one of the commissioners? Do they have the qualification? Because they came with a different lower qualification as compared to the chairman. So that is a very big question which we have to decide.
I remember yesterday the chairman of LSK, Eric, they were talking about he doesn't envy the Supreme Court because it's going to be quite something, the constitutional interpretation of what we have already written as a country. Now we are trying to challenge it. Alex, coming back to you, looking at the volumes of evidence that Azimio alone, actually they brought it in with a lorry, and there are mountains and mountains. We saw the judiciary has been on the front line to ensure that we have digitization everywhere in government offices. And they have talked about online filing. But yesterday we did see all those volumes, and we are wondering how long it's going to take to peruse that. Because it's evidence, you have to go through it. And unfortunately, we have 2 weeks for everything. Not even for hearing the case, you have 2 weeks for everything.
Yeah, it's actually true. The documents you saw, and indeed, our system have been digitized. But that notwithstanding, and as Council will agree, even with the digitization, the court normally uses hard copies. So it's important that hard copies are availed. So what they were having there, possibly they were uploaded on the system, on the e-filing portal. But you have to avail the hard copy. That's the requirement. If you leave it to the court to download all those documents and then print them out, the court is going to use a lot of resources. And remember that the filing fee they paid is just about 1 million. Perhaps the court is going to use more than 1 million to print out those papers, because as in most cases, the court actually looks at the hard copies. So it is not out of the ordinary. Yes, we've digitized, but as the courts are working up to now, they are still using hard copies of the document. And so it's important that whoever is bringing their documents, they also avail hard copies of it to avoid the inconvenience of the court trying to see where, there is this document we filed, we can't see it, perhaps it was never downloaded, it was never printed, and things like that. And all parties are going to do that, even when you see IBC responding, which of course you expect they are going to respond with quite a number of papers. Remember that the IBC is supposed to present all the forms 34 A's and 34 B's to the Supreme Court.
So you haven't seen anything yet?
You are yet to see anything. All those forms are going to be available in hard copy.
We need a warehouse.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll go down.
Yeah.
And because of the interest of time, allow me to bring in Diego. Incidentally, one of the petitions was filed by your party leader. And the counties, yes, we are looking at the presidential petition, but the counties themselves, there is a lot that is quite paining them. Pending bills, they were not even able, some counties were not able even to hit their revenue targets, and all that is being transferred to new governments.
Yeah, and before then I want to maybe disagree a little bit with my learned friend, and I'm not a learned friend myself, but I think I saw every commissioner read the results at the Bomas of Kenya. They had 6 days to bring out issues wherever they were. I mean, before the winner was announced, we had 6 days from the day of election. So, I mean, they had all the time in the second or that day to say no. Whatever is being done is not legal. We are being thrown out. We are getting this. But you cannot wait until 10 minutes to the announcement. Then you speak about opickiness, which you cannot tell us what is that opickiness. Because even today...
We are going to see it at the Supreme Court, I'm quite sure.
Yeah. But you see, the Supreme Court is not, it's not the commissioners who are going there, the 4 commissioners. It's the Azimio team. So the 4 commissioners should have told us the opickiness from their level, because they are part of the team. Which was giving us the rules of elections.
So you say they should have said, as opposed to waiting for everything.
You know, it's that saying that there is opickiness. Then the name grew to other levels. But where I stand, still they've not told us where the opickiness is. Then when we go back to the counties and even at the national level, I think one of the biggest challenges that we will have with the incoming government, whichever, at the county levels and the national government, is debts. There is a lot of pending bills. There is a lot of debts at both levels. And that's going to be a big challenge, how to raise those the money to take care of the budget and the also expenditure and development budgets. There will be a big issue in regards to the debts and the pending bills. So the governors have to either improve their ways of collection. They will also have to see how they can work with the foreign governments, because like Meru County, there is a time they under a program working with the foreign government to make their loans and then also repay that loan slowly with the incoming governors. So that will be the biggest challenge. But I think we also need to see a way of fighting corruption, because much of our money as a nation and also even at the county level, there is a lot of corruption. A lot of money goes to people pockets, people projects, and all that. So if that is then taken care of, I think Kenya is rich enough to take care of its people and also to develop itself. Yeah.
And Gibson, in 2017 we were in the same place. In 2013 we were in the same place, that's the Apex Court. In 2022 the same thing. What are some of the lessons that we can pick up from that? And of course the IEBC, the Supreme Court had a list of what they call free, fair, credible, verifiable, transparent election. And IEBC say that what we did was free, fair, credible election. This is the second time that Chebukati has to sweat it out again at the Apex Court.
There are key lessons, and thank you for that question. There are key lessons which we have drawn from the 2013 election petition, the Raila Odinga petition, as it was famously known. Back then, it was the very first task for the Supreme Court to actually determine. It did its work, and there were issues of questions around how they arrived at the decision and issues of how the process was conducted, but that came to an end, and Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila were actually declared to have validly won. But fast forward, the issues which came up at that particular time were used as a lesson. There were some key key implementation outcomes which were actually implemented, which necessitated when the filing of the petition in 2017 again. It means that we saw a very clear process which was almost transparent. The decision went, the court did its best to vindicate, because it's believed that the 2013 one was an unpopular decision, however much it gave rise to a presidency. But then the court tried to vindicate itself, tried to put things in perspective, that if you're running an election, this is how you're going to do it. They even came up with the rules of the Supreme Court on how the petitions are supposed to be done, which opened up the space for advocates to appear and be able to vent out their issues on an equal basis. And then the rules of admission of evidence. You remember in 2013, at the late hours of the day, the ODM then presented a very big 900-page affidavit, which they claimed was having all their case in there. So when it was thrown out, then they said our case was bound to fail because our key evidence was left out. So this time the court has come with very clear rules that at what point should be able to file all your documents which you need to plead or which you're going to use as pleadings in the court. And then there's even a conference which is done to actually ascertain what evidence do you want to go with. What kind of limitations do we talking about in terms of time? Because in the conference they even tell you, Bentro, you will be having 40 minutes to present your case. You'll be having 30 minutes to revert the case. So that is very cast in stone. And everybody is told that application of yours, we don't. You have prosecuted it, but from here forward, this is how we're going to proceed. We don't think that it's very important or it's very necessary, or we will actually be able to factor whatever it is that you are trying to allege, so that it's a very clear and transparent process moving forward, so that nobody comes to say I was shortchanged, evidence was never listened to. Everybody will have a chance to have his day in court attended to, and then be able to. So those are some of the key lessons. Coming to the 2017 one, we are talking of the minor KI case majorly, which has actually transformed our election management. That is very key. But now, the 2022 one, we are anticipating that the small tidbits which we are seeing with the IBC especially, to make it more transparent and more credible, and to, of course, look more of a sister's wife, is what we want to see, that the court comes up with the decision which is going to achieve that.
Okay.
And some of the outcomes we expect is them to lay clear the internal management of the commission. The BBI case did give rise to, there were issues of the three commissioners. But then, now we have an issue where if a chairman is absent, what is likely to happen? Because we are likely to have such a situation if the court finds that indeed the chairman, because it seems like Azimio is going for the head of Chipukati on a silver platter. So if that actually happens, and the Supreme Court delivers to them, then we will be in a very tight situation, which the court will also have to tell us what happens then.
Yes.
Or people will need to go to court to have that clarification.
Okay, and of course, Alex, I'll be coming with a question that I'm quite sure every Kenyan is asking. What are the most logical or probable, without even going to the merits of the case, what can Kenyans expect? But before then, a report by KPMG, that is the audit report, as mandated by IEBC, it got about 22.1 million voters. The report also showed that women were the majority of voters. The youth were the least in terms of the numbers there. But unfortunately, we have men who are occupying the lion's share of the seats, based on what we have seen from the elective posts that we've had. So we have women who have the votes and go to cast them, the youth who are majorly on the campaign trail, and of course are used either positively or negatively, and then we have the men who end up with the seat. How do we blend this? More or less like fertilizer from Ergon.
Maybe before I look at the gender and the voting patterns, I think the Constitution gives the chairman of IEBC the right to announce the results. But the process, from printing of ballots, from the campaigning period, all those decisions are made by the commission. So if there were errors election errors done by the commission, then the entire commission should be banned. It's not about the chairman. Okay. It's only that is the guy allowed constitutionally to announce the results. If he made a mistake by announcing the wrong results, then that's a personal issue. But the election, if there are malpractices and all those other illegal things, then the entire commission is liable. And then I don't see, or rather foresee, the Supreme Court looking at maybe going for the neck of the chairman. It is possible, yes, but then there will be, most likely, maybe the legal person can explain to us, there will be a constitutional crisis. Because at the moment, the president-elect has been announced. The president who is in power has limited powers to some extent of maybe probably gazetting a new chairman. So if we get in the election, then we might have the current president as the president for the longest. But that is a legal thing that maybe we can get some explanations.
It's a good thing because the legal minds will explain to us as we wait for all these what happens then.
Yeah, then on the issue of voting patterns, I think we saw a lot of vote apathy. We saw very few young people going to vote. Generally, personally, I think it's because of two issues. Currently, there is a lot of hunger in Kenya. And so people are out there to look for food. That is a big problem all over. Yes. Secondly, youths have nothing to look up for. When do I go and vote a leader? We voted a leader 5 years ago. We voted another one 10 years ago. There are still no jobs. There are still no opportunities. The economy is collapsing. So there is a question of why should I? Why? And again, there is a lot of rural-urban migration. And majority of the young people came to town looking for jobs because of the same factors that I've mentioned. And because of that, people are not, you may not use your money to travel back to go and vote. Spend your 2,000, go and vote, come back. Then you have not paid rent, you have not paid the school fees and all that. So I think all these things contributed to low turnout, especially for the young people. Yeah, because
because we had 8 billion people who did not vote, and anybody who grasped those votes will be the president. Now, and 1 minute each. IEBC had the opportunity to say that we are not on the same page yet. What could they have done? Could they have maybe summoned the apex court and told them, yes, we have 7 days to announce the presidential result, but we have some housekeeping to do. So can we get more time to avoid all this drama that we are currently experiencing? Because at least we could have had one IEBC voice.
I have that question. The announcement of the presidential election is constitutional. So the Supreme Court only comes in after the announcement. So whether all the commissioner, the six other commissioners, other than the chairman, had boycotted or not, the chairman was mandated by law to pronounce the president within 7 days.
Yeah.
So because that's what the Constitution has said.
Yes.
Going beyond 7 days, it should have been unconstitutional. In fact, the Constitution does not even envisage a situation where...
That is cast in stone. That's right. Okay, let me hear 1 minute of what are some of the probabilities that we can expect as Kenyans as we wind up in a minute.
What I think we can expect as Kenyans now that the petitions are filed is first we wait for IBC and the Kenya Kwanza site to file their documents. And then of course we wait for the judgment. The judgment which I think in my own view will be highlighting two issues. First is either I should be able to annul the election, go into a fresh election, or actually find into one of the prayers of Azimio, if they prove it, that the 50% plus one was actually never attained, we go for a rerun. So those are the two major things. There are people saying that, the Supreme Court can turn into ABC and start turning and then issue a certificate.
Yes, no.
But, the Supreme Court will want to operate with the Constitution because the provision which they are trying to use is in the Election Act, which I think is inferior to the Constitution. So
and what would happen if it is retallied and we find that, let's say, a possibility that Raila had more votes? What would happen?
of course, that election, if it's retaliated, then I don't know under which rule, under which rule they will use, because we should anticipate that, because at the point where we are, the Supreme Court can only use the Constitution. It cannot lower itself to look into the act, while our Constitution is very clear.
Yes, let me give you a minute as you wrap up.
Yeah, I want to congratulate every elected leader from the MCA, MP, governor, all the way to the president-elect, as we wait for the maybe the court case to be finalized in another 14 days. They all did a good work. Even the losers, I want to congratulate them. And we need to keep peace across the country. We are a peaceful nation, and we need this all through.
Alex?
Even if there was a retelling and they said that Raila got 50% plus one, the court still does not have the mandate to pronounce Mr. Raila to be the president. And so that is, people have to be aware of that.
Yes.
Secondly, I think the going to Supreme Court is quite important for this country, given what happened in this country in 2007. And when you see what going to the Supreme Court does, is that it lowers or it tones down the tension, because now people are expecting a decision from the court. And what will come out of it, then people are not going to castigate or accuse the IBC, but they'll be saying, this is what the court has said. And that's why it has always been important, and many people have argued that we have to build confidence in our courts, because once we erode the confidence that we have in our courts, then such decisions may not even hold.
Okay, indeed. Thank you so much. I have been with two legal minds and a governance expert there, trying to put things into perspective when it comes to the Supreme battle. And because it was filed and has to be heard within 14 days, now we have 13, excluding today. Well, today they actually not much is happening, just as Sarafina told us at the Apex Court. But thank you so much. I have been with Diego Ngogi Wilson, who is a governance and leadership expert. He has worked for a couple of years in the counties, so I know a few things about the dynamics of that, and especially now that a lot of counties, the governors are stepping down after their 2 terms. And we have also been with Alex Mola, who is an advocate of the High Court, a constitutional lawyer, and also Gibson. Gibson, always a pleasure having you guys, and the legal minds as well. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for your insight. That's why we put a cap. My name is Ben Troy Njue. Thank you so much for watching, now giving rise to Kurunzi Mashinani and Tamrini. Thank you so much for watching. Let's continue this conversation on social media.